Is this thing on? Yeah. Okay, it's 5 o'clock, and let's start right at 5 o'clock, which we should. I think the first thing we should do is have a roll call, just to make sure that we have a quorum. Cynthia Ramirez?
Present.
Eduardo Mena?
Here.
Israel Irwali?
He's out of town.
Jackie York?
Present.
Joshua Acevedo?
He did not return our call.
Sergio Coronado?
Here.
Shane Haggerty?
Here.
Tanny Berg, I'm here, and Walter Miller is out of town as well. If you, we're going to call you to see if you're going to be here to assure that we have a quorum. We may or may not be able to reach you. Sometimes we can, and you tell us, but sometimes we can't. But you know what? Cell phones today are a miracle. They actually show you who called. So if you see you've gotten a call from the Central Appraisal District, and you don't know whether you're going to be here or not, but you've gotten a call, call us back to at least let somebody know that you're still thinking about it. We're hoping and expecting you to be at these meetings, but it's only polite to let the appraisal district know, because they keep calling and they keep calling. If they don't get an answer, it doesn't mean that they're going to stop calling. They're just going to keep calling. And it's very frustrating for us when we get a message that say, well, no answer. We had no answer. There was Joshua. We had no answer. So I'm just asking. Let us rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and salute the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. We have some recognitions, staff recognitions. We actually have 5, but only 2 of the people who we're going to recognize are here. So I'm going to ask the board, when we recognize everybody, to allow us to take a picture for them so that they can have some feeling of belonging, because we certainly belong to them. I want them to know that they belong to us as well. Vera Dickerson. I want to recognize Vera for 30 years. 30 years of dedicated service. You're joined in by the flags.
Vera's been with us, like I said, for 30 years. I've been working with Vera. She's been a clerical assistant in many, many departments, and if it wasn't for her in our business personal property department, I think we'd be lost. So I want to thank Vera also from the staff. So thank you, Vera.
Picture, and this will be Vera's forever. So she will blackmail us with this picture.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Vera. Good job.
Thank you, Vera. Thank you.
I know how you did it. You were 15 when you started.
Vera now is 35. So
Yes.
5 years. She was 5 when she started. All right, let us recognize Michelle Martinez. Michelle has been with us for 20 years. Michelle, congratulations.
Michelle's in charge of our business commercial department. Started out as an appraiser. She's now the manager of that department. Michelle went to school with my daughter, so we grew up together, I guess you could say. Michelle, thank you from the department, from the whole staff here. We appreciate everything you do.
The picture.
Thank you. I want to point out for the record that Joshua Acevedo is here, Dr. Acevedo is here with us as well, although where is he at this moment?
Right there, next.
Oh, there you are, right there. All right, so I just want to point out that he's here as well to add to the attendance for this meeting. I also want to point out that there are 2 additional employees who will give them their recognition next month. They simply could not be here this time. Let me read out, there's actually 3. One is Gabriel Solis. He's been 35 years with the Central Appraisal District. Another is Rick Medina, who's been here for 25 years, and I can't wait to give that to Rick. And Leticia Lopez has also been with us for 25 years. Let's give them a round of applause. again, we will give that directly to them next month. Hopefully, they'll be here then. So before we start, is there any public comment?
No, sir, no one has signed up for public comment.
Okay, then I hope you've had a chance to look at the minutes. We sent them around to you. If you have any additions or corrections, now would be the time to bring them up. If not, then I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes as they've been presented.
Second.
Motion by Jackie, seconded by Sergio. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion is accepted to approve the minutes of the last meeting. That was back in January 19th. We couldn't, the reason you obviously see February is missing is because we were one short of a quorum last month. So we did have presentations, but by law, we had no business, we had no motions, no nothing. So see how important your position is to this board. That's how, I mean, you represent your entity. We are the source of the financial resources for your entity. So this is an important position that you've been appointed to. We really need your presence. And so I just want to point out that we were one short of a quorum. All right. Discussion and possible action regarding the financial audit report. And this is for years ending September 30th of 2022 and 2021. Renee?
Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate the chance to present your audit report for you. I'll try to keep it reasonably short.
By the
and
way, you
brief.
have them next to you.
You should have a blue binder in front of you, and the very inside the blue binder, not attached, but detached, is the one-page summary. I figured you didn't want me to spend time and go through 30 or 40 pages, so I've got it down to one page. It's actually all I could remember, so bear with me. At any rate, so this one page gives, the financials are trend analysis. What's going on with the district? How are we handling things? What's happening in our city? And to me, this is just reflecting tremendous growth. And I like to mention that, keep in mind, we had that thing called COVID for a couple of these years. And in spite of this, we have these numbers. It's showing, in my opinion, tremendous growth of the city and then tremendous capacity of the organization to handle that growth. And let me show you why I'm saying that. So our current assets, that's our liquidity. What can we work with on a regular basis is sitting at 8.6 million. Well, it was 8.7, it was 7.6, 8.3, 8.2. Basically, it hasn't fluctuated more than 5%. But if you compare that with the revenue, which is basically reflective of the taxes coming in and the city of El Paso, our revenues have jumped from 13.9 million all the way up to 17.4. That's about a 25% growth in both revenue and expenditure. And yet we've done this, the organization, while maintaining only a 5% fluctuation in our cash flow. So that's quite a bit of efficiency and utilization of our liquidity during this time frame. So I'm going to say that helps the taxing jurisdictions because you're not having to pay so much to have this organization run, being very efficient there. Overall, your total assets also have stayed fairly consistent at 12 million 5 years ago, jumping up 13% by 1.6 million to $13.6 million in the last year, in the last 2 years, actually. So again, reflecting of the growth of the city that we have. The other liabilities that I wanted to point out are your net pension liabilities. This obviously reflects the pensions, but look at the seesaw that happens. This is your pension plan is affiliated with the state, but go back 5 years and our pension liability is how much our organization, according to the actuaries, are going to have to pay out over the years for those individuals that are here today, over the 20, 30 years that we might have to pay them out. But again, I want to just point out the fluctuation. Where in 2019, we had a liability of, well, I should say 18, of 500,000. It grew all the way to 1.3. Then it dropped all the way down to 300,000. Then it grew by $1 million to 1 million. Then it dropped again down this past year all the way down to 1.3. What's causing that fluctuation is the stock market. The market was extremely good to us back in 2021, not so good. So the reason I'm pointing this off is 10 to 1, you're going to see a tremendous drop. So that $1.3 million credit is probably going to flip around the other way in 2023. Is it something you have to worry about? Probably not. Is it something you should budget for? Probably not. Because again, as the market fluctuates, it should be able to take care of that liability for you. And I'll point out one or two of the pages in financial statements that might show that a little bit better. But overall, it is just reflecting the pension liability there. Overall, your net position, that's our capital, our equity in the organization, it has grown from 4 million up 2.5, complete 61%. So again, as I say, reflecting growth of the city, the organization is up 61% in its capital position over this 5-year period. How did it get there? Well, our revenue stream, as I told you before, which is reflective of the city growth and the taxes and the percentage we have to take, has grown. Our revenue, as I mentioned, 25%, $3.5 million increase in this 5-year period. And as you can see, just from last year, our revenue jumped from 15.7 all the way to $17.4 million. So quite a significant increase in this 1-year period. As you all know, as you do the evaluations out there, I like to show my clients that City of El Paso finally joined the rest of the country and actually has some inflation on our marketing values, which we've, again, you all know more than anybody, have been pretty flat for the last 20, 30 years. So it's about time we join the rest of the nation. So all this, as the revenue comes in, we turn around, turn it right back out to the taxing jurisdictions, which jumped from 15 million up to 16.7 million, a $1.7 million increase, a 12% increase in the expenditures and the paybacks of the taxing jurisdiction just in this 1-year period. And again, a 25% growth in this 5-year period. Bottom line, what does all this mean? We've just had tremendous growth in this last 5 years, and especially in the last 3-4 years. So huge increases altogether there. That's a real quick overview of the organization. I do want, like I said, if I could just point a couple of pages in financial statements. It is an unqualified report, so the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted governmental standards. Page 25, jump you all the way over there, because I talked about the pension. We had talked about this before, because the discount rate before I mentioned was at an unusually high number. Well, they finally brought it back down. Your discount rate over on page 25, you'll see in the bottom middle, is at 7.6%. And as a result of that, we have the pension liability sitting at $1,076,000. If that rate were to drop to 6, or the pension liability would jump all the way up to 3.8. So that 1% difference makes a huge $1 million, $2 million variance on the pension. So that's what I'm saying. The stock market is what will dictate the fluctuation there for y'all. And the last thing I need to point out is that we do a compliance test for y'all. We give you an audit opinion on financial statements as a whole, but then we also look at the report on internal control, on compliance, and just pointing out that's the last page, page 39, and it reflects that you have a clean opinion that the organization did work within the compliance and strong internal control, meaning we didn't have just the journal entries, we didn't have any corrections, and we don't have any policies or procedural change that we think we should present to the board. Bottom line, it ain't broke, don't fix it. That is right. So, that's your report.
So Renee, I have 3 questions. First of all, just for the board's information, we do not control what stocks obviously are invested in that pension plan. We're part of a statewide organization that does that, and so I don't want anybody to imply that the Central Appraisal District in El Paso is actually managing the retirement account for our employees. We actually use, what is the name of the organization?
The Texas County Retirement System District, same as the
Just
county
like
of El
almost
Paso.
all the other entities, including the county, they are the ones who make those decisions. And obviously what you said is true, and the stock market's fluctuation is reflected in the returns that we get. But we think they're well invested, and obviously they've done very well in the past, and we think they'll do very well in the future. My question is, under current assets, and this is I'm giving back my background in accounting, I can understand current assets going up, especially as appreciation of buildings and stuff. But what would have brought our current assets down by almost $700,000 between 2019 and 2020? Why did we have such a steep reduction in the current asset value between 2019 and 2020, which we've made up most of now in 2022? But what happened? Were there bills that had to be?
No, I believe, because again, your current assets are your cash in hand at that time. And I believe it was pretty simple that we had just made a very large distribution back to the entities at the end of the year back then. So it was really just a timing difference of making a payment literally like a month early. So we normally would pay our expenses in September, October.
We also received the payment that two payments for the accident, we got them shortly after.
You got them in January, and this was the end of December.
Right, they were-
We could not book them as of September.
So it's just a timing thing?
Yes.
The adjustment between the 7.6 and the, say, 8 something, by January 3rd or 4th, we were there, and that was. that's-
Well, because the year ends on September 3rd, September is when we get those payments, and we got them like a
Got
day
it.
or two later, meaning beginning of
So
October.
that's an important note, because if not, it shows like there was some
Fluctuations.
deficiency, which there wasn't.
Right,
So and I'm sure maybe you annotated it, I'm hoping.
back then, yes.
All right, and there are no, and as you said, I just want to point out for the board and for the community as a whole, there were no suggestions. You didn't have to make any suggestions because you felt we were totally in compliance with the way that we are.
Correct, that's what the very last
I just
audit
want to
did.
point that out.
Correct,
Thank you,
exactly.
Renee, for what you did. Are there any other questions? Yes, of course.
So I was just wondering, in terms of, I know this is a financial audit, you're an external party. Is this, like, I guess, what kind of risk assessment is made to kind of determine the scope of this? Or is it something you just do every year and it's the same thing, without kind of consulting with the financial department on it? So I kind of wanted to know more about that background to get to this
Okay,
report.
no, real good question. If you don't mind, if you flip over to page 2. Yes, every year, and what I'm saying, on page 2, hopefully this is semi-answering it, but what kind of risk assessment you'll see in performing the audit of generally standard, what do we do? What are we looking at? And we have to look at these with fresh eyes every year. Even though we may have the same accounting department, we have to go through the internal control, the compliance, on a year-by-year basis, one who we look for. So we use our professional judgment on maintaining professional skepticism. I trust you, but I have to verify. I have to have professional skepticism that if you could steal, how would you do it? What would you do? We're not doing a forensic audit, but we have to be aware. Does this look or smell bad? We identify the assets at risk for materiality. Do I have to look at your prepaids? It's the same account, it's immaterial? No. Do I need to look at the cash that flows in and out? Yes. Do I have to look at the abatements? Yes. Do I look at what kind of control you have over the assets, as simple as the computers and laptops? You know, all of a sudden that's something that can walk out the door. It's a lousy $500 item, but when you've got 100 of them, it's a big item. So we have to assess this every year. We obtain an understanding of the internal control. I know what I want you to have, but do you all have good internal control? And that's where, we use our quote expertise. What kind of internal control should you have over cash? Should you have over the accounts receivable? Should you have over the investments that you carry? Are you maintaining internal control? And that's where I said, you have the policies in place. When there were breakdowns of your policies, then we came in and said, hey, you've got a reasonably weak policy on investments. You need a strong investment policy. We need to make this change. In fact, we do have a suggestion there. You have a weak policy on the control over your fixed asset. And so we came, well, you've built a very strong policy now. And so, number one, we check it, and then we check to see that you're following it. Evaluate the appropriateness of the accounting policies, and then finally we conclude whether, in our judgment, there were conditions or events relative to those policies and procedures. So the answer is yes, it takes half of the time that we work on you is administrative review, internal control. The other half is ticking and tying the numbers themselves.
And these suggestions, like you said, you just made a suggestion based on something, but then there was nothing that you said that was necessitating, I can't say that word. Necessitating, thank you, a corrective action plan. So what's the difference between a suggestion on getting a
On
control?
policy.
It's just making what's in place stronger. What's in place works, but there's suggestions to maybe kind of just round it up a little bit and just make it a little tighter. as they
No,
would say.
I get that.
didn't
So
have-
why wouldn't it be in a corrective action plan?
Okay, if I may, actually, we made the recommendation.
Right.
We made it.
Okay.
We wanted that paragraph
Totally.
to have a little bit different wording to make it more clear. But we ran it to the auditors because they need to make sure that it complies with the state code. Because the act, the state has the Investment Public Act. So they check it and they gave us the okay and said, yeah, that's fine. It's just to make the paragraph more clear. That's all. There is nothing wrong with it. We just need to make it clear.
Did
I
that
have a
answer-
question.
Yes, Jackie.
So then for clarification, you said you had a suggestion for
No,
a
he said in the
policy.
past.
And it was just a suggestion in a paragraph for wording?
Yes.
It wasn't
Yes.
an actual
No.
policy change you needed?
What Renee said was during the about our investments.
Yeah, you have
I
two
just want
different
to
plans.
specify what it was.
Yeah.
What he said is that there was a suggestion on investment.
Right. Okay.
And it was adopted.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah,
it.
So
right.
because it was adopted, it's not part of the report because we adopted it.
Right.
So it became part of our plan.
Yeah, you have two different, you have the financial audit and then you have the investment policy. And in the investment policy, on the last page, you saw a highlighted sentence that we made a recommendation to add to clarify, and it went through. But that was in the investment policy and the financial. Now, in the past, with the financial audit, when Renee Pena's group looked at it, and they actually made not suggestions, but recommendations to change, we made those changes. And that's in the past. So what he's saying is we're following those audit changes that we needed to do to make sure that we were following.
Or
Gatsby,
it would have
we're
shown up
following-
again.
Yeah.
If we didn't do it, believe me, I
would
know
show
this
up,
guy.
yeah.
He would have brought it to, we would have gotten in trouble.
Yeah.
So the fact that the fact that whatever recommendations he made in the past, we obviously adjusted, that's why he didn't bring them up. Because
Thank you.
he's done that before, so.
Yeah, good.
Anything else? Anybody else? Yes, Sergio.
Yeah, what was your representative sample of the processes that you investigated for your report?
As a general rule, our samples are anywhere from 20 to 50% of the various areas. You know, we will look at disbursements, we'll look at investments, we'll look at the reports on the distributions to the entities. And again, depending on the account, we'll determine the sample that we use.
And I know I'm new to this, but what is our policy with respect to the audits that's done by the companies every year?
Well, by state law, we have to have an outside audit done every year. And so we have an outside audit. They come in the fall and they start doing their research. And then we present it to the board in February. Of course, we had to wait till this to present it, and that's done every year.
And it's put out to bid, just like any other contract.
Yeah, that's the other question I was asking with respect to the policy on the persons that are the providers for us. Is it that we do it every year? Is that put out to bid?
Well, they're considered
do a multi-year
professional.
contract.
They're like lawyers. They're professionals. We don't have to go out. And so because Pena's company deals with governmental entities, and has given us a fairly good deal. If we do anything, we'll go out for quotes or for professional proposals, yeah. But we don't have to go out for bid because they are a professional, like a lawyers or CPAs, you don't have to go
Yeah, it
out.
would be an RFQ, right?
Yeah.
Not an RFP.
It could be an
Right.
RFQ.
It could be,
But the reality is we've been satisfied with our
Right.
audit.
yeah.
But internally, do we have a policy of when we're supposed to be going out for that, or we just do it every year?
We do it as needed,
As needed.
Okay.
and that is by state law. We do it as needed. We don't do it if we don't need to, and the choice, I guess, is management and the board.
Okay.
So the reality is, you try to get what you want is some continuity. And if you do 1 year at a time, that would be so onerous for us
I
to
understand,
maintain.
we've had the audit.
Same thing at the county. Same thing.
County and at the district, what I,
Same
you said.
deal.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anybody yet? All right. I think we need a motion to approve,
I think it's more to accept.
this audit.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Renee, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you do.
Well, we have the investment. You
We
want-
now still have you because now we need to discuss our investment policy, which we've clarified.
Okay, as,
Sergio and Jack. Go ahead.
so as we discussed just a second
Oh,
ago.
new guy, Renee.
You know, when we go through our audit process,
Here's your
we
answer,
look at the
Josh.
policies that were established, and we make sure that
That's what you
you're
want.
following them. And one of the issues came up on the collateral. And so we had discussion on, okay, the wording of the collateral policy is saying X, Y, Z, but the types of investments that you have now, do they fall in there? And so as we got through it, number one, we determined you are properly collateralized, that's fine. But the wording in here, because it did say all funds in the bank accounts which are not covered by FDIC, we figured that that could be and should be struck because not all funds have to be covered because they're treasuries or other funds that are outside the scope of FDIC, but they're still government insured. And so we came up and said, let's suggest that we, in working with you all, the recommendation was, okay, how about if we get rid of these words? Will that make the collateral position that the bank is doing, will we still be protected? And will our policy properly state the organization's desire? And we said yes. And so presented before you is a minor adjustment to your policy.
And we have to approve this adjustment, but I want to compliment Rosa and her team, because it was Rosa and her team who felt that this needed to be clarified, presented it to Renee to be sure it would be all right, and that's why you're getting it today. So thank you, Rosa, for what you do, always. So I need a motion. First of all, is there a motion to accept this change in our policy?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ed. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Jackie. All right, now, is there any discussion? Does anybody and this, Josh, answers your question. That's exactly how it happened. Is there any other discussion related to this adjustment in our investment policy? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously. So that is now our new, again, thank you so much, Renee, for what you
Thank
do
you
all
all.
the time.
Appreciate it.
All right, let me get back to the minutes. All right, here we go. All right, so now we have to review and approve our financial reports for October, November, December, January, whatever, forever. Item number 6. Item number 6 on your
Good evening,
agenda.
Rosa Goldman, Chief Financial Officer, and yes, we have 4 months. We are presenting the report for October, November, and December 2022, and January 2023. The financial report contains the balance sheet, the report
Tab
of
6
revenues,
of your binder.
expenditures and changes in cash balance, the investment report, and the note to the financial report. Yes, and they are towards the bottom of your whole packet, or your big packet. So for the month of October, I'm going to go over the note. So October, we had one account that was over budget, and it is the bonding general insurance. Over budget for $1,889. We pay for the whole year in October, for the whole fiscal year. So we paid the entire amount, and it came higher than we had budgeted, that we had anticipated. We just missed the number. So then for the next month, which is November, you take a look at it, we are over budget on the asset building equipment account by $48,052. We needed to buy new security cameras, and it was needed because the old ones were old technology, and we couldn't expand anymore. And since we needed to get new cameras, the old system didn't allow us to do it, so we needed to change kind of like the whole thing. So, and it was not budgeted, so we are over budget by that amount. And then we have an additional over budget on the bonding and general insurance for $142. We needed 2 public notaries that needed to be renewed. And again, we already were over budget on that account. And then if we go to the month of December, well, we didn't have any additional over budgets in December. But then we go to January, and we had 1 additional over budget amount on the assets, computer equipment of $13,200. It was for hard drives that we needed. They were budgeted for, but because the cameras were not, and if they are kind of on the same category, that's what is going to be additional over budget. Now, the other thing that I need to mention is under the encumbered funds, we haven't used any monies. We still have the same on the litigation reserve, and we have the same on the TCDRS. So nothing has been used. Are there any questions?
So
Dr.
let me
Acevedo,
just
yes,
add,
sir.
when we're over budget, we have a contingency fund.
Oh, absolutely.
that's-
And overall budget,
So we're
we
not
are
over,
good.
when she says over budget, she's saying for that line item.
The line
Not
item.
necessarily over budget on the whole, on the whole.
Right,
So I
exactly.
want to point that out.
Correct, yes.
And we have a contingency fund specifically for the potential of being over budget a little bit. Josh,
Absolutely.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. So the hard drives are related to the camera purchases?
No, there's something completely different. And like I said, those ones were budgeted, but because the cameras were not and they are on the same category, the thing with the cameras is going to affect that line item for the rest of the year, basically. Anything additional that we buy on that line item is going to be already over budget.
So what were the hard drives for?
Well, we needed David, can you talk to that? David Stone?
Expansion, we just needed more
Storage
storage space.
expansion.
And have we looked at cloud storage versus?
We have cloud storage.
Is that what it is?
Storage.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
But
cloud
these
storage,
are
not hard.
physical drives.
Okay, so what would make the decision to choose one over
Well,
the other?
usually we keep the data internal. We don't put it on the cloud, like for the day-to-day CAMA, the day-to-day accounting stuff, just to have better control over it. And mostly the stuff that goes to the cloud is like backups. And if we're going to archive images or something, we put that stuff out in the cloud. But we try to keep the day-to-day data that we're using internal on local hard drives, just because we're worried about interruption in our operations if we lose internet connection or something, or if something happens where we can't upload the data to the cloud or retrieve the data from the cloud. So we like to keep the day-to-day stuff internal.
It's kind of like a backup, is that what you're
Right.
using?
Right, and where we found, we were putting a lot of stuff in the cloud, but then when the hearing started and the appraisers needed that data, when the taxpayer comes in, it was taking too long to get that data out of the cloud. So we have to be able to deal with taxpayers right now, not, 30 minutes from now because of time.
There's
so.
some latency on, especially during the hearings, because the hearings are very short. They only have 15 minutes. So if you're waiting for large files to be downloaded from the cloud, everybody's just sitting around, and that eats into the time available for the hearing. So evidence is for the current year is one of the things that we like to make sure it's kept local, so we have faster accessibility to it.
Archives, excessive documentation, pictures. Once the hearings are over, a lot of that information gets put on the cloud. So then that gives us space. But as El Paso grows, there's more data that has to go into the system.
Yeah, I guess I'm just, that's making sense, but I'm also thinking that it's a little ancient to have everything still on hard drives, and I'm thinking about the internet infrastructure that might exist because these days everything's really fast, and I get that there's cost investment that might need to happen because we're still behind on stuff, depending on what kind of internet connection we have. But I feel like that shouldn't be limiting, and maybe that's something that we could discuss in budget as we're going into the next one,
Sure.
to see how we could modernize more
Sure, we'd love to do
internally.
that. Yep, we sure can, Dr. Acevedo. Thank you.
Any questions
Any other
relating to these 4 months? Yes, Shane?
On that same line item, the computer equipment, is that variance off by $50?
What month, what year, what month are you in?
Which month?
January?
Okay,
January?
January. January,
Which account?
The same one, computer equipment?
Asset computer equipment, the 13,200?
Right? Said that for January it was 13,450, the 15,200 year-to-date with the
Oh, on the
year-to-date
actual.
budget of 2,000, but then the variance is 13,200. Shouldn't that be 13,250?
Okay, you are looking at the report of revenues, expenditures, and changes in cash balance, right?
Right?
Okay. This month of January, we spent 13,450. Year to date is 15,200. And we had allocated to that account 2,000. So we are over budget, the 13,200, the one that I have on my next page.
We're not missing $50 in there?
I'm sorry?
There isn't $50 missing in that?
Is it?
where you at?
I don't have my calculator.
Well, the year to date is 15,200. And year to date budget allocated was 2,000. So the difference between 15,200 and 2,000, isn't it 13,200?
You're right. That's why I was curious about that first entry, the 13,450.
That was just the amount spent in January, but the 15,200 is the
The year-to-date.
going
Aggregate,
back
the
to
aggregate.
The year to
October.
date.
And that's what the difference is, the year-to-date minus the budgeted year-to-date. And that's
Allocated.
where we're getting the 13,200.
I got it. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Subject to audit.
Thank you.
We're approving them subject to them being audited, which we do at the end of the year. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay. We have presentations from EPCAD departments.
Yes, we do. And well, they're going to go ahead and get set up. Before we start, what I would like to do is introduce some of our folks here. We have 4 different departments that are going to be giving you guys a presentation. Let me introduce the managers, and then they can introduce some of their staff before they get started. Crystal Pickett is the manager of the residential department. She's going to start off with her presentation. And then I believe Michelle, she's going to give the presentation on the commercial properties. And Eric Wright is back here somewhere, is going to do the business personal property. And Ms. Beatrice Medina will be doing our compliance, what used to be our statistics, is now compliance. So Crystal, if you want to have some staff here, you want to introduce? You guys want to come in? Come in. Come in, and then you can leave.
Be bashful.
It's like they were forced to be here.
Come on
You
in.
can stay.
They do a lot of work, and so those that were able to stay, I wanted them to come in and introduce themselves. So, Crystal, if you want to.
So yeah, these are some of the appraisers that we have in the residential department. So when I go through some of the numbers that I have here, I just kind of wanted you guys to have a face to the work that you guys are going to see. So you guys were supposed to say hi back.
I did. Of course. Of course.
Do you guys need the lights off?
No, turn
or-
off the front light. That one? No, the other. Yeah, that one. You're right. You're right. Okay, thank you. Yes, good.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with the residential department. What is residential? Residential does everything from mobile homes to tract homes to condos, townhouses, multi-million-dollar houses like this, and agriculture. This year, we did the numbers, and we make up 64.7 of the total appraisal roll. So it's all based on residential, okay, or most of it. The breakdown for the protest for 2021, total number of protests filed was 41,263. Of those, 31,840 were residential. 15,000 protests that were filed by tax agents were heard also. We had 3,528 filed online. So if you break that down by each of the 22 appraisers I had, they each had to hear 1,447 protests, either informally or formally upstairs in the board. That was 72% of the total protests were residential, 28% was commercial and personal property. Online, 96% was residential, 4% was the other two departments. This was interesting this year. Usually, the informals hold a lot more. We can settle more informally with the protests than we do with anything else. And it still was the case this year. Informally, it was a little over 10,000 that we settled informally. But it's very close. The green would be no-show and withdrawn, and then the red was heard in the ARB. So it looks almost like it was a third, a third, a third. This is just an example of what an informal hearing is like. That's an appraiser sitting with a property owner, and they're discussing their value. They would bring in photos, settlement statements, fee appraisals, estimates, or information that they would get from their real estate agent based on sales. Permits we get from the city, they're usually given to us electronically, and that's what prompts us to go out there to pick up these new properties. We also drive new subdivisions that we're aware of. And then Socorro and Horizon, we get emailed monthly, the permit information. We don't get it electronically. The workload for this year, for the notices we're just about to send out, we worked 56,000 permits. Permits meaning new residents, additions, pools, septics, mobile home placement, demolitions, everything that comes into a home. We did 8,893 rechecks, which means percent completes on properties from the year before, condition issues, missing improvements, things of that nature. We did 68 T8s. T8s is a form that we do through the mapping department for splits, combinations, things of that nature. So if you break that down the way I broke down the protests, from the 22 appraisers, they each had to work 661 accounts in a 5 to 6 month period in order to get those notices out on time. This is just the breakdown for the land and the ag. They did 141 ag field checks. There was 66 new subdivisions for the county of El Paso. They worked 206 of those T8 combination splits. They did 27 land reappraisals. Some of the neighborhoods that we had, the land was really low for what it should have been. So they did those. They did 956 of those land field checks, and that's divided between just 4 dedicated land appraisers. This slide is really cool. It shows you what's going to be a platted subdivision. This was a subdivision in Tierra del Este in 2008. It's 109 acres undeveloped. That's what it looked like in 2011. So then when you look at the breakdown, it was at 1.2 and it ended up at $72 million. Texas is a non-disclosure state, so we don't have access to MLS. Nobody has to tell us what they purchase their properties for, so it makes sales a little bit difficult to get. We rely on deeds. We do send questionnaires out to property owners, and sometimes they actually send us the information so we know what they bought their property for.
Sometimes.
We do get some deeds, and then, of course, we have internet research, and we do subscribe to a couple of services that actually give us some information that we can use. You may not find this interesting. I do. The lowest sale that we have this year was for $25,000. The highest was 1.6. That's probably not accurate because we don't get the sales information, but this is what we have that we're going to use as far as our evidence this year to prove our values. The smallest house we have on file is 480 square feet. The largest one as of this date is 17,000 square feet.
There are bigger houses in this.
There absolutely are. They're just not done yet.
There's some 25,000 square foot houses, there's some 28,000.
The other thing that makes those large houses difficult is if we don't get the plans and we're not allowed on the property to measure them, we rely on pictometry and we do our best estimating, okay? So I found this interesting. It was from Realtor.com and it showed the top 10 markets for 2023. El Paso's number 2.
Wow.
This is from Texas A&M Research Center. December of 2021, the month's inventory for listings was 1 month. In January of 2023, it's 2 months. So houses are still selling. And I just want you guys to keep in mind that our appraisal date is January 1. So whatever's happening right now in March or April, February of this year has no effect on our 2023 values because we stopped January 1. So anything that happened the year prior is what we're using. This is what an appraiser or a field specialist looks like in the field measuring one of the properties. Basically, we print out appraisal cards. If we're not using the iPads, we do have iPads that we use, which route all the work. We can load all the work. The appraiser can measure everything on the iPad and submit it while they're in the field, so it makes it for no paper, and their stuff gets synced into the system, and it's usually in the system by the time they come back. They usually leave by 9 o'clock to avoid the traffic, and so they can get as much work done as they possibly can before they have to come back. When they do go to the field, if nobody is there and they happen to arrive at a house that doesn't have a Ring doorbell, they leave their business card at the door and, do whatever they can as far as measuring. We don't go inside the properties, of course. We measure as much as we possibly can, take a picture, and hopefully we can get the property owner to call us back. So if we have any questions, we can make it as accurate as possible. Pictometry, this is what we see from pictometry. This would be a good indication of one of these houses that we can't get on to actually measure, so it can give us the idea of what we need to do as far as trying to get it on there the right way. This is another example. This is another example. So the white portion on there, that's a mobile home, and then it's been added onto a round. So from the front, it probably doesn't look like a mobile home, but at least we can tell that there's a mobile home underneath there.
We go from gated communities to dogs. So this could be a property that they couldn't have access to because of the fencing and the dogs. So the pictometry is very, very important tool for them.
So pictometry. If we don't have access and we can't measure, then we'll come back to the office and we'll take the time to measure it. So this year, via pictometry, we looked at 2,600 accounts and we added $119 million onto the rolls just from pictometry.
These are the aerials that we utilize.
The other thing we have is Change Finder that you guys approved for us. And what it does is it takes last year's overlay and it puts a new flyover on top of it, and it gives us an indication of what we're missing. So we started off with 11,000 of those accounts. Oops. Sorry, guys. 11,480. We actually reviewed 6,200. We added $209 million to the rolls from that Change Finder. Basically, we're still finalizing our numbers. We're getting ready to send out that first batch of notices. The market for 2023 still shows an increase, so we're going to have a lot of protests this year. I believe the first batch is going to go out really soon, and it's a majority of residential, and there's a lot of them. So we're going to have a lot of people coming in and protesting. And that's all I've got for residential, but that's
But I have a
guys
question
did.
for you. Could you go back to your second slide?
My second slide?
Just your second slide, actually. Because I want to show the entity something that is interesting in El Paso. That is what makes it so difficult for us. It's the county and the city, and I represent the city, and Sergio, you represent the county. No, right there, that one that you just showed, that you just moved. There. Look what it says. It says 65% of the taxes collected are from residents, 35% are from commercial. I'm going to tell you something that's unhealthy. That in a healthy community, it's 50-50. And that's the reason your homeowners are paying so much of the tax burden. When we loft so much of the responsibility on residents because we don't have enough business or commercial accounts or industry, then this is what you get. But I want you all representing your districts, whether you're from the school districts or whether you're from the county or me representing, or Jackie and I representing the city, this is an unhealthy chart for us. If you want to ease the burden on homeowners, we've got to increase the value of commercial property by bringing in more heavy-duty industry. So I'm just letting you know that's a great chart. If I were you, if you can get that printed, to me, I'd love to give it to the mayor, because if we do not somehow, thank you, if we do not attract somehow additional commercial investment in this, I'm not talking about shopping centers. I'm talking about business, industry, a Tesla plant, a Toyota plant. If we can't get those values, Amazon has helped a lot, But Amazon is going to be almost all robotics. So until we can figure out somehow for that burden to be eased, guess what? It's going to be on the shoulders of residential, and you're going to feel it when you try to sell houses. So I'm just letting you know that's why tax rates are 3% for residences. Thank you. Your report's very interesting. Very good. Any other questions of residential before we go to commercial?
Any questions from Crystal or her staff?
Good job.
And that's a perfect entree for you, but it's not your fault. I wasn't reflecting on you.
This is Michelle Martinez, again, the manager of the commercial department. If you have any of your staff here, if you'd like to have them stand and recognize them.
Stand. This is Haiti Sanisetto. She is the assistant manager. She's been with the department for lots of years. There's a lot of years. She is, I really wouldn't, I don't know what I would even love her assistant. She's very knowledgeable. She's very awesome with people. So she's really helped me out as manager. One of our newest additions, Myra Fano. And then we've got our big guns over here. We've got Wesley Woods. And we've got Juan Cordero. They're some of our more experienced appraisers with the RPA, very knowledgeable. We've got our Guillermina Velasquez. She has been amazing. She's been with us about a year. And a year and a few months. And she has just been an extraordinary amount of help for us. Okay, and I'm sorry if y'all, I'll try to speak up. Is that it? Yeah. So thank you all. They do an amazing job, and I'm gonna try to explain to you what it is that we do, and what they spend a lot of their time doing. But first, I want to thank you all for your time. I know it's a little late in the day, and I just we really appreciate your engagement and your service on this board. So thank you so much. All right, so what do we do in the commercial department here at the appraisal district? The commercial properties are all non-residential and commercially zoned real estate. There are about 24,000 accounts, which include the exempt governmental properties in schools, utility properties, and any of the properties that you see when you're driving down a main thoroughfare. Generally, the values are going to be higher on a per property basis, and when we attempt to determine the market value,
Yeah, so we got to do the mic so that we can get it recorded. Sorry,
Yeah?
Michelle.
Okay.
There you go.
Let me try to find my place here. When we attempt to determine the market value, we have to look at what the players in the market are actually doing. And there's three approaches that of appraisal that come from that. And there's the income approach, the sales approach, and the cost approach. And so in the commercial department, we do a significant portion of ours are done on an income approach, which looks at the rent potential, expenses, and cap rates, and try to determine values that way. Okay, so we value about 5,500 properties on the income approach, and that, the breakdown is apartments, hotels, offices, retail. We have about 2,000 retail properties on income. Okay. Like Crystal had mentioned, we are a non-disclosure state, so we do have to rely on the, the appraiser interviews. We will attempt to make contact with both the buyer and the seller to try to confirm sales. We look at publicly available documents that are like on the county website. But we also subscribe to some third-party sources, Axiometrics for our apartment data, TREP, and Real Capital Analytics for some income information. It's like, they have some income information and some sale information, and then CoStar, which will have some, a lot of listings and some sales. Okay. So identifying new commercial construction is a major concern for us, and permits are one way to identify new buildings going up. The municipalities that issue permits share their information with us, and we enter that into our PACS database. This graph shows the major permit info from our database over the last 3 years, and overall, it looks like that the permits have decreased, but you can see it's just the light green part, which is the tenant finish out, which is tied to new businesses. But you can see that the light blue, which is going to be the new buildings, that has slowly gone up over the years. Okay. So as far talking about workload, even though the commercial permits have gone down a little bit, we still have 24,000 properties to field check. And according to the state, we need to be reviewing them at least once every 6 years. So there is plenty of workload for us, even in times of lower permits. So commercial properties can vary from a simple kit warehouse all the way up to something as large as the fountains at Farah or even in Amazon, as you all are aware. And even though we do run an income approach on those 5,500 accounts, we will still calculate a cost value on everything. And so for our cost values, we have to rely on Marshall Swift tables, which is another third-party provider. And this method requires many details to be recorded about the property to accurately calculate an appropriate cost value. These details include your occupancy, your class, your wall height, area, perimeter, and information about your associated yard improvements. This includes your asphalt, your concrete, your light standards, your elevators. So we get very detailed in these cost value calculations. Sometimes the layout of the property is not straightforward, and although we do try to get the plans from the city or the property owner, it's not always possible, like Crystal mentioned. We are able to measure most properties in the field, but when they do not allow us, we do have to use the pictometry tool. And you can see how helpful that would be, especially on a property like this, because, we can measure angles and stuff like that. Or even if we are able to measure it in the field, having that visual on that to confirm measurements that we took in the field or angles or arcs is very helpful. So it's really wonderful that we're going to every year on that, because that really helps us too, because we can see if there were any improvements on a property as of December. So it helps us with omitted property as well. Okay. So settling ARB protests is another, is something that commercial also has to do. Almost 50% of the non-exempt properties are represented by an agent. Most of the agents have several years' experience working with commercial properties. And commercial staff needs to be knowledgeable to be able to adequately filter through the arguments and assumptions that are presented by these agents. And you can see that commercial, almost half of our non-exempt properties are represented by agents, whereas 20% of the business personal property is represented by agents, and only 3% of residential properties are represented by agents. In 2022, over $11 billion commercial value was timely protested, and the average per property value was over 1.5, so it was about 1.7 million. So based on all the properties that were protested and all the value that was protested, the average per property value was 1.7 million. And the average for business personal property is 1.2, and for residential is about 200,000. So with the complexity of the field work and the high stakes at the ARB, it's imperative that commercial staff be well prepared for the challenges that they face. And so this is where Haiti and Ruben come in. We have created a structured 9-week training for all our new hires to the commercial department. And this is supplemental. The appraisal district does provide the training for the registered professional appraiser, but we need the staff to be able to hit the ground running a little bit quicker. So we do the 9-week training for them to help them understand, the things that are going to be thrown at them over their careers. So we touch on many subjects, including the history of CADs in Texas, ethics, open meetings, the different approaches to value, field procedures, and navigating our database, which can be a challenge. And as with anything, it continues to be a work in progress, but the training has certainly come a long way with new staff, and they are hitting their stride a lot quicker than before. So before I close out, I'd like to show you some of the new projects that are happening around. There's a lot of new industrial this year, and so this is the Marmax operating warehouse at 3900 Global Reach.
What is it? I've been wondering what that is.
Marmax, it is, yeah. It's over 1 million square feet. I should put the square footage on there. And it's the TJ Maxx.
Warehouse?
Okay.
Yes.
See,
So the
someone
problem
said
with
they
that
thought it
property
was
is
a Walmart.
it's on land that belongs to the airport.
Yes, sir. But
So we don't get any value on the land. We can only
get
charge them for the building and whatever the building improvement is, but we do not get any revenue off
there's a
of.
We do get a
possessory
little
It's on
interest.
the other side.
We can't charge tax on the airport.
We get a possessory interest off of the lease. So that's like a land, but it's a percentage of the
negligible.
lease, yeah.
So I just want everybody to know that we get them for the building. If it's on private property, we get the value of the building and the value of the land. If the land goes up, we appreciate that. On this, because it's leased land from the airport,
Gotcha.
we basically only get revenue on the improvement on that. So we get a little bit on the leasehold interest, but mainly it's on the building. So-
I thought that Global Reach East is no longer airport property, which
Yeah,
is Yarborough.
That one is.
See, that's Walter Jones and George Perry. It's right there. It's like where the golf course is. That's
That's
still
right
airport
before it.
property.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have zoomed out a
George
little
Perry
bit on
is
It's
that.
a huge building.
Yes.
They were smart to build it there.
For them. Well, it's good for the airport. But we can't tax it because it's on
So then the airport's gonna tax them.
They can't tax it either.
Well, they do pay a
just get
lease
the lease.
to the city.
We have what we call a possessory interest on the lease. So it's a percentage of what the rent is for the city. So we get a percentage of that on the land lease, and then we pick up any improvements and any personal property, any fixed assets.
Right, that-
Yeah.
And I'm sure that'll be
Okay,
significant
go ahead,
as well.
Michelle, I'm sorry.
No worries. And just a few pictures. You could
Look at that, that's
see
huge,
some grounds.
See how big that is?
massive.
Huge,
It is huge.
huge.
So.
Thank goodness they put it here, but I wish they would have put it on private land.
We got another industrial
one's
property
good.
at 13699 Gateway. It's the El Paso Logistics Warehouse. So it's on the front. Okay. So this is where Amazon is on this.
Right.
This is Amazon, and so this is the new warehouse. And we got another new building right here too.
That's
Yeah,
more
that's
money-
Socorro.
more money for us.
Yeah.
That is good
Yeah.
money for you guys.
Socorro
That is
ISD.
Socorro.
Socorro ISD has a lot of new construction. They've got and just some photos.
Beautiful building.
Oh, we've got 1600 Northwestern, and this is going to be a Schneider Electric expansion warehouse. We already have Schneider Electric, I think, up here, and so this will be And this is Conotillo ISD and City of El Paso. And the Socorro Logistics, which is just starting to get built out, but this is for the City of Socorro and Socorro ISD. And this was all previously agricultural land, and this will all be an industrial site. So, and I don't have a whole lot of photos for that one. And we also have some new apartments. This one is at 12701 East Lake, and it's Las Mansiones at East Lake, and it's in Socorro ISD.
They are gorgeous. They are something
Yeah, and those
else.
apartments are killing us because all these people are coming and we have to build schools. They have their kids going in there, and we're exploding at the seams. And it's amazing. We love it, but it's a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways.
Yeah.
Castellanos on the west side.
This is the Montecillo, another, just a continued expansion of the Montecillo. The Montecillo, this is in the City of El Paso ISD. This is and everything there should be, I think, or 4-story, most everything will be.
Those are little apartments?
Yes.
It'll probably be,
Combination of apartments, offices?
Residential on top and commercial on the bottom.
yeah, probably like retail here, and then the 3 top will be residential. We've got, and then so Town of Anthony has some expansion, and so they've got the Anthony Palms and a new Whataburger.
A new what?
Whataburger. So this is
everything.
Yes,
Everything counts.
you gotta start somewhere. And so this is at Antonio or I-10 and Antonio.
So is that like a little shopping mall or something up there? The first one you mentioned?
Where?
Anthony Palms,
Whataburger.
it's apartments.
Yeah.
This is, I'm sorry, it's apartments.
Okay.
It's apartments.
Whataburger is a shopping center.
Yeah,
It's just a
yeah.
Whataburger.
And this is New Mexico up here. So this is right on the state line. And Estancia Valencia Apartments for Isleta ISD and the City of Socorro down at 588 Yarborough. And then El Paso Behavioral Hospital. This is an expansion of it. So this is for Canutillo and City of El Paso. Okay. And you get to see our friendly faces again. And do you have any questions?
So one concern that commercial property owners have is they protest the values, and then the next year you go back to what you did before, and then they protest the values and you take them back down again. And the only one that benefits from that are the agents. Thank God the agents make their money on that adjustment. But my question is, do we take into consideration the previous year's adjustment when we do the assessment for the subsequent year? Because we have to figure out some solution to that, because we can't just keep bouncing this ball back and forth.
The way that state code reads, Michelle, if it's all right if I, is the only time we can change it is if we have convincing evidence, if we have enough evidence, and most of the times we do. If we change a value from a settled value to the next year, is because there's been some changes. We have more information, it's been expanded, what have you. If it's under a lawsuit or an A or B, and we don't have enough preponderance of evidence to change it, we don't change it.
But the thing is, Dinah, that it goes back to the ARB and they bring it back down again. I mean, I hear you.
They have the right to do it.
I know, but
We
what I'm
can't do
saying
anything.
is, it's just a very disconcerting thing for a commercial property owner.
One of the problems too is most of the agents protest on equity. So they're basically saying my commercial property is not being appraised equally to someone
Right,
else's.
we always
So
do that,
if we
comparables.
fix the inequity, theoretically, the value should be correct, but that may necessitate raising the value of somebody that got lowered because they said I wasn't being treated equally. Well, if we look at the comparables and we raise them as well, then everybody's gonna go up.
And I think that's fine, but I think what happens is then you go back to the ARB and they bring it back down again.
And that's-
So
yeah.
that's very hard for property, especially when we're passing CAMs on
Yeah.
to tenants. It's hard for tenants to see a real high value and it comes back down, we protest it, and then the next year it goes back high again, and we bring it back down, and the next year it goes back high. I mean, it's just very disconcerting, and we're trying to attract new businesses to
Well,
this area.
here's something else, is the state comptroller comes in and does a property
I
value
know,
study.
I know.
And if we don't bring it back up and
I
we
know.
fail the study, then that affects school funding, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes with the compliance department talks about, and I'm going to give you guys a report. So it's kind of a vicious cycle. It's that.
Good for the agents.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's great for the agents.
Well,
Is it
here,
good for us?
there's a study going out. They've asked for information from appraisal districts, the legislature has, and we've been sending it out, of how many protests were done in 2022 and how many were done by agents. Houston had almost 500,000 protests, 75% was agents
And here
that
it's
filed those
50%.
protests. So, yeah, we had about 50% of our protests were filed by agents. So, you know, when you look at Fort Bend had 112,000 protests, and over half of those were by agents. So, you know, when you look at other districts, we're not the only
Smaller
one.
communities generally will have less agent involvement because they're small businesses and they basically represent themselves. Bigger communities like Houston and Dallas
Oh, yeah.
will always have agents represent them because you have large property owners with large properties and they're not going to come in.
Well, and they own
represent
multiples.
themselves. Right,
small
and that's where
community,
you
but
get,
yeah.
and that's where you get your agent involved. Anyway, we appreciate what you do, and we know it's thankless.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Are there any other questions of the commercial? Thank you for what you do. All right.
Eric Wright, you want to come up here on personal property and introduce your staff? Eric Wright is the manager of our business personal property department. This is only his second year as manager, so he's done a fantastic job. That's not his second year of being here. I met Eric when he was a VOE student and came on as an appraiser, worked in our IT department, and now is a manager. So he's really grown with us.
The most thankless job. It's been
And your department, everybody who's here?
With me, I have Vera and Martha, who are part of our clerical staff. They help. I've got Vera and Martha here, who are part of our clerical staff. They help with daily entry, a lot of the letters we get in, the renditions, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Without them, we wouldn't get the work in the system as quickly as we do, so the appraisers can audit the records that are submitted to us. Back here in the back, we have Rebecca. She's been with us a little over a year now, going on a year and a half, right? Cam, he's been here the longest out of my appraisers here at 6 years?
Yeah, almost 7.
Almost 7 years. And then we have Mr. Johnny with us. He's been here a year and 2 months, yeah. So,
This is not the whole staff, but this is just who was able to stay.
right, so
A lot of them have families that had to go home too. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Eric.
no, it's quite all right. But without them and everybody else, we wouldn't be able to get it done, so thank you guys.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so we'll go and start off here. Dealing with business personal property, we deal with anything from convenience to medical to warehouse to import-export, trucking, even home businesses. Anything you walk into, get your nails done, massage, you just want to go eat. You see it, that's what we're out there to go pick up, okay? August through February is our discovery phase. The challenge there, the extent to which taxable personal property can be assessed depends upon its discovery. Discovery of business personal property is inherently difficult due to its ability to be moved. A lot of the times, you may have a business here today, maybe they choose to go to a better lease option. They were here last year, they're gone. We go out and field check. If we don't do our research, we can lose that value on the roll if we don't find out where they moved to. Okay. Goals for us in that phase is to canvass the entire county annually, even if we're only required to do so every third year. This is something we've done every year for the past several with 100% completion. We identify new businesses and interview owners to determine the nature of the business and gather as much data as possible to facilitate an appraisal. This year, we spent some time developing a new property record card so that we could spend more time speaking to property owners when we're picking up their new business, identify who we spoke to, a good phone number, and who the owner is. So when a property owner reaches out and says, what happened when you went out to my property, we have a more complete record to discuss with them. We identify closed businesses to delete them from the appraisal roll, conduct research to ensure businesses did not just move to a new location. In the last 2 years, you'll see some metrics about where our account growth has been, but in the last 2 years, each year we've had to remove about 2,500 each year. Okay, and that's after calling, confirming, verifying, looking up business records. We also confirm that ownership for existing business has not changed. Hair salons are probably the best example of this. They change ownership year to year sometimes. Not entirely sure why, but a lot of those we have to check year after year after year. Discovery sources, newspapers, the El Paso Inc., El Paso Times business section. City permits are another one that come up. Internet searches. Commercial appraiser field inspections. Anytime that we have a new structure go up, they come by and let us know, hey, we've got a new strip center, we got a new office complex, it's 100% complete, we already see tenants, we go and head back out there. We send warehouse listing reports yearly to get an idea of who is housing their inventory in those warehouses for taxation. The El Paso Airport listing reports, who is hanging their business aircrafts, and then Delgado, Acosta, Spencer, Linebarger, and Pettas also come in and get us information on delinquent properties that maybe we need to go and assess that have been there for a couple of years. Fieldwork. On this one, I'd like to take a minute to thank James, Dinah, and David for allowing me to ask the board to let me go for a mobile app and iPads. And I want to take a minute to thank you all for approving that last year. It's been a big help. Presently, properties are automatically grouped by street name nightly. Okay. The property data is then bound to a digital map and displays for ease of routing and property identification. And then specific streets and areas are then assigned to appraisers. What it used to look like before, a street like Mesa would take about 2.5 reams of paper. That's what 2.5 reams of paper would look like if we printed it. An appraiser would have to take that, manage it, and go to each property, make their notes, come back and enter that into the system. What we started doing was trying to convert some of that to PDFs when we were using so much paper. Now, our system had a limitation where we were hitting about 500 record limit, so we'd have multiple PDFs for a street. A little easier to manage in the hands, right, when it's on a tablet or something of that nature, but still a little cumbersome when you have to swipe through, note on the PDF, and still have to come back and enter that into the system. Updates were being done daily on staff progress. They'd come in, they'd write, this is how many were still in business, how many were gone, how many changes, how many I did total. I did research, any meeting notes, things of that nature. And then reviewing the separate submissions was cumbersome because you have 8 to 10 appraisers. They're submitting that daily. Your lead staff has to go in and verify that and see, is everybody doing what they're supposed to do? Now, instead of a giant stack of papers or a PDF, the map itself will have these little boxes on it at each business location. You click on the business location box, and you get a listing of all the properties there. Having it this way means we're able to see at this structure, we should have all of these businesses. A good visual indicator for the appraiser, easier to step through, quicker to identify and make changes to the properties. The other thing we get to see is live stats on how they're progressing through their data. And then if we need to, we can get on-demand reporting for where the appraisers have been, how much they've worked on, as well as what time of day that they were there to complete their tasks. So it's been a huge help for not just the lead team in managing, reporting, and keeping us going positively, but I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from the appraisers who use it. They don't have to manage so many records. It's property by property. This has also allowed us to do digital photos a lot more reasonably. So where in the past we didn't have as many photos for personal property, one of the goals this year was to put a picture to every personal property account that we field checked. So it's been pretty successful, and the team's done great to getting that out there for us. Year over year, 2018 we had 24,700. 2019 we kicked up to 25,360. 2020, 25,875, and 2021 we kind of leveled off at 25,800. In the last year, we did pick up about 900 new accounts, up to 26,713. Again, in these 2 years, staff had to remove from the roll 2,500. in the removals and research, we were still picking up and replacing those empty suites with new structures. That's how come we're not really seeing a huge dip here. But that just goes to show, even though we're showing a steady trend and we're field checking all of these every year, we do have a significant amount that comes off and comes back on year over year. Appraised value in billions, 2018, it was 6.6 billion, 2019, 7.1, 2020, 7.3. In 2021, it was 7.1. And this last year for 22, we did have a big jump up to $8.9 billion. Renditions is our appraisal phase, January through May. Okay. The property tax code, section 22.01, requires a person to render all tangible personal property used for the production of income that the person owns or that person manages or controls as a fiduciary on January 1. Rendition reports must be delivered to the chief appraiser after January 1 and not later than April 15th. However, we shall extend the deadline to May 15th upon written request to the property owner. That is not a, we can do it if we want to. If they submit it in writing, we have to give them that option. Okay. And then property tax code 2313 allows the owner of inventory to have it appraised at its market value as of September 1 of the preceding tax year for which it is being appraised. This does require an application to be filed with the appraisal district. That's important when you think about retail for companies that maybe have higher inventory in the winter. They opt in for the September inventory so that they're reporting a lower value. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
For example, we have a property owner that leases out to the business, and there's equipment that's owned by both the property owner and the business. How do you determine who you're going to bill?
On the field inspection, when we go out there and we speak to the property owner, if they indicate they're leasing any items, we do create a record for...
Let's say it's not leased, it's just regular owned by the business and not the property owner.
If it's owned by the business, then the business would have those assets on their record.
Don't make any determination, because I know some businesses that have where it's just built to the property owner.
For those, it should be on the business owner's record, unless the business owner proves they don't own it, in which case we create the record for the property owner who's leasing that property. They would come in and they might contest it, they might not, but if they prove it's owned by the business owner again, then it would go back and forth until we've got proper ownership.
And on the rendition, there's a section on the rendition that they're supposed to put down anything that may be leased or not owned by them, and who does own it, so we can assess
By
them.
the owner.
Correct.
Huh?
By the owner.
Or by the tenant.
Yeah.
By the
Yeah.
tenant.
Yeah, there's a place on there for them to put that.
And I have a question.
Sure.
So there's a lot of, say, food trucks, food courts now that they lease, they rent piece land. And I know that the truck is actual personal property, right?
Correct.
How would you appraise that?
With those, we actually have quite a few food trucks on the roll already. A couple years ago, we had done a study and pulled as many as we could. We created the accounts. In more recent years, it's been a lot of field inspections to the sites, such as the food truck circus. There's a couple of locations that we know they go park at. Those property owners, in some cases, will give us a listing of who goes out there. In other cases, the appraisers themselves will go pick them up and bring them back. As far as the valuation on that, if the property owner furnishes their bill of sale for the physical truck, that would be a portion of it. But then anything for like the generators, the stoves, any microwaves, anything affixed to the interior along with the inventory would also be assessed as well.
I'm going to admit this on record, and I'm probably going to regret this.
Don't do it.
But we're not just, our appraisers are not just appraisers 8 to 5. When I take a walk in my neighborhood and I see a flyer, I take the flyer of a house that's for sale. When these guys are on their days off and in the evening, if they see something, they write it down, and then they come in and they check it out. So our appraisers are always on the lookout. So sorry, citizens, but they keep an eye out. So if they see something, they'll come back in. If we see something in the media, I think El Paso Inc. recognizes a food truck every week, and so we look those up. Do we have them? Okay, let's go get them. So sorry,
But tacos, huh?
that's our job.
They really are.
You're right.
Discovery.
Why can't we just go to the comptroller's office and get a listing?
That was my next question.
Send that part.
Not all of them are listed with the comptroller, and sometimes it takes a while to get information from the comptrollers, and some of it is not open record information. So we do have, used to the comptroller, for an example, would send us the occupancy of hotel motels. We now have to request that in an open records request. So we found that that's one of the tools we use. We don't just disregard it. There's many, many different ways that we use for discovery. We'll get a list of licenses from the county. You know, if you have to have a specific license to have that, we'll get that license, a list from the county through an open records request. But so much of what we do is boots on the ground, and that's our best way of discovering. It's not our only way. I mean, there's a lot of other ways, but we do get information from comptrollers, from the county records, things like that. I'm sorry, Eric, I didn't mean to.
No, it's quite all right.
Go ahead.
Renditions submitted per year. In 18, we had 15,900. 2019, we had 16,183. For 2020, when COVID hit, we did see a significant drop back down to 15,900, and that kind of leveled off at, again, 15,900. This last year in 2022, we had the least amount at 15,739.
No, just to let you know what happens, every property is required by state law to file a rendition. The only penalty that's applied to it, if you don't apply, is on your tax bill, there'll be a 10% penalty that will be attached to that if you do not render. So there is nothing other than that to require
We have
somebody.
to find it, we have to catch it, we have to assess it, and then they get 10%.
Yeah, and so
it's
we
very
have a list of everybody who renders, and those that don't, we have a code, it goes on there, and when their tax bill comes out, there's a 10% penalty applied by the tax office, the consolidated tax office.
So the question is, if they have to render, but if you have that equipment from the previous year,
You still have to render.
well,
You
I
have to render
understand
every
that you have to render, but you apply the tax penalty, shouldn't you also depreciate the previous year?
If they don't render,
The owner does.
No, if you rendered the previous year.
yeah,
The owner does, not
I
us.
understand that, but if, let's say, you render one year, you don't render the following year, but you also already have a rendition. They don't render this year, then they have a penalty because they didn't render this year.
right.
But don't you still have to depreciate their previous years because they did render?
No, sir.
Why not?
Only the year that they render. If they render and give us the information, we'll go in and depreciate the property based on their rendition.
So you
If
don't
they
get-
don't render, then they get that penalty attached. Then the third year they render,
Then they
at that
can
point, then we'll give them the updated depreciation.
So you don't get any depreciation if you don't render?
Right.
Right.
It's a penalty.
Yeah, you need to render. When we work a rendition, we will take the information and the current year and the cost of the equipment and the age of the equipment, and we will depreciate based on the rendition. So it's to their benefit to render.
Right.
Yeah, it's very much to their benefit to
Just
render
for
every year.
information.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And these numbers look profound, but there's only a 200 difference between 2022. It looks, on
Yeah.
a bar chart, it looks
Yeah.
big, but
Yeah.
it's only 200 renderings less.
When we talk about that, where accounts are getting the tax
I
penalty,
mean, it looks,
we have 26,000
Yeah.
accounts, so we have 11,000 yearly that get a penalty for failure to file. Okay. In the year, when we start receiving our renditions, we only receive about 25% between January and the end of March for a given year. Okay. That is an increase of 1% over 2021. Most of our accounts will come in right at the deadline,
right.
April 15th. They come in
All of us.
buckets, and buckets and buckets and buckets, and everybody knows that's personal property stuff.
Procrastinators.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And you'll see here it's reflected in that figure, 7,829 came in pretty much on that day. We have presently for 2022, 3,500 property owners who had opted for the extension and filed by the May 15th deadline. I did see this year where we went from 17% up to 24%. So we had several property owners take advantage of the May 15th extension, which is still good because we're getting the renditions in a timely manner. We can get them worked and depreciated and the proper values on them. But we did see more property owners take advantage of that in 2022. Additional work. During all of this time, getting renditions. We've done our field work. Appraisers are also processing Freeport exemptions, okay? Vehicle allocation applications, special inventory monthly reports, in addition to the actual renditions that they're doing. And sometimes all of this work has us feeling a little, well, like that.
What is a Freeport?
Freeport?
Yes.
It's a great question. A Freeport exemption will exempt a percentage of inventory that leaves the state within 175 days. So if it's passing through and it's not staying here long
Just
enough.
warehoused here for a certain amount of time and then boom.
Distribution,
Correct.
export.
It's to give the property owner the incentive to set up shop, have their personal property here. They may have their trucks, machinery to facilitate their import-export business, but they have the inventory flowing through without.
Especially with all those warehousing that we have being built here. I guess
Correct.
they're warehousing here for a while.
It's in and out, in and out.
Yeah.
How many days can they leave them here?
Has to leave the state within 175 days.
It's hard to measure, but that is the rule.
Correct. We do have a formula that we run through on the application that gets submitted. It also tells us what percentage of their reported inventory gets exempt.
And what about vehicle allocation applications? Is that like for dealerships or?
The vehicle allocation application will be for the trucking companies themselves, where they're traveling across the state, interstate, to different areas. They'll report to us, hey, in Texas, we traveled 50% of our miles. So if a truck is worth $50,000, we would assess 50% of that vehicle value because only 50% of the miles driven were done in Texas. And we have to do that per truck, per trucking company.
It's based on the honor system, because there's,
Well, we get a, we do
we get a report, but it's an honor report, because we don't measure each truck.
Yeah, the
We get a
huge
report
company
from
like
the state.
UPS or FedEx, they have thousands
Those are
of trucks.
based here.
Good luck. And they,
Yeah.
yeah.
We did actually get a report this last year from the comptroller to help support the values given to us on the allocation. So we're using that to cross-check what they give us so that they can't say, we drove only 20% when the report shows you drove 70.
Right.
Okay.
And I think one of the things, Mr. Mena, you were talking about is, yes, the car dealers report monthly sales, and then we take that information and we set up the value based on that. It's a report that goes through the county. We get that, and so that is another special inventory that they have to deal with. And that's on a monthly basis.
That's probably huge. The amount of cars that sold, that was probably ridiculous.
And they report that monthly. That's what that last line item is there, the special in inventory monthly reports. And then in February, which we just got through, all of the dealers will send us their declaration for what they've done for the year. So all that work, all those numbers, we start pulling hair out. The renditions themselves can range from being very quick, very nondescript, to pages and pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of assets. Okay. A similar rendition to this one would have taken our most experienced appraiser approximately 2.5 days of work to get through before any workflows had been evaluated and implemented. IT and research departments had created a TDC finder. TDC is, of course, the entities such as yourselves and who has the jurisdiction to tax each item. Populates an Excel spreadsheet to make sure that we are putting it in the proper tax group. Okay. The commercial department manager in the past had come through and shared an Excel spreadsheet with us that helped us evaluate proper depreciation on each of those line items as well. So we went from having to get a ruler, read across, say, leasing company's assets, see where it was listed, figure out what type of asset it was, apply proper depreciation. Now we're able to digitize most of these into Excels, process it out to put the proper TDC on it so it gets out to the proper entity, and then we apply proper depreciation as a result. What took 2.5 days before can take anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour for our most experienced appraisers to get through. So we are dedicated to using our time and resources to try to streamline and improve what we're doing here. Makes us start feeling a little bit more like that, which is great. Next up is the equalization phase. It takes us May through July for us. As I mentioned, we get a lot of our renditions in May, and we've already started hearing protests for a lot of our other properties. So we're under a crunch to process all of those renditions while protests are going on, while we have to be in hearings, and process those renditions well so that they can get out and onto the roll before certification. And hopefully give them enough time to protest if they needed to before that certification date as well. It's also referred to as appeals, protest, or hearing phase. As a result of the rendition process, protests for BPP do not rise to the level of commercial or residential accounts. Many are for businesses that closed after the appraisal field review. Sometimes we go out there in October, somebody may vacate in December, and they're like, hey, you guys didn't show that I was gone. And we're like, well, we were there on this day. Here's the photo. You were there. Here's my lease agreement. We vacated in December. Oh, okay. Our assessment date is January 1. Let's get that squared away for you. As a bonus to that, and the way a lot of our protests get handled, we're able to settle informally quite a large portion. It's usually between 40 and 45%. I think 2020 was our highest percentage at about 50%. And that was, of course, the COVID year. We had some different procedures in place, so we had a higher influx of not only protests, but of being able to settle informally with the property owners. Any questions?
So I want you to know, Eric's is the hardest. This is the most ambiguous. I mean, with all due respect to commercial and residential, personal property is just, how do you assess it?
I don't know how you do it.
We have to rely on.
How many employees do you have?
You have a great staff.
Right now, I've got 14 total employees, 10 appraisers.
How's your
But
stress
it's
level
the
from one to
hardest. It's just hard because you're relying on the value. And we're not, we can't go in there and tell you what a car is worth or what a suit is worth at Dillard's or Amazon's got. We rely on them. And of course we can ascertain if they're coming in way too low, we can come back and challenge it. But I applaud you and your team because we appreciate what a hard job you have.
Definitely, yes.
We appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Where's me? All right, we've got one more presentation, and this is going to lead into a report that I have to give the board, and then we're pretty much done. So please, a little more patience, I hope.
We'll be out of here no later than half an hour.
Yeah, this is Beatrice Medina, and she's in charge of our compliance department. And this is the department that deals with our property value study, our methods and procedures review from the comptrollers. This is one that also helps with the other departments with their ratio studies. So, me, if you want to introduce some of your staff, if they're here.
It's Lisette Rincon, Cristina Reyes, and Rene Moini. Good evening. My name is Beatriz Medina. I've been working for this organization for 20 plus years. And this is our presentation. It's a little overview about what we do in the compliance department. We work with a property value study. We work with maps review and also analyze data for residential and commercial. This is our cycle for maps, the PBS, and also the CAD deadlines. We work with a sales submission report. We do adjust cost tables for commercial, residential. We analyze properties before the notices go out. This is in March. From April through June, we work informal and formal hearings. In August, we work the sales submission, the reappraisal plan, and in September, we work with a mass appraisal report. In October, we assist with information for the state appraiser for the property value study. In November, we collect data to send to the maps reviewer, and also we work on the annual report. December, we submit information to the maps reviewer and also assist with information for the property value study and the critical error report. In January, we get the map reviewer. She comes over, she starts, the process for maps, and then in January 31st, we get the results for the property value study. And if there's anything that we have to challenge as far as any ISDs, we have until March 13 to challenge the property value study or the values. Government Code Section 403-302, Property Value Study. The Property Tax Assistance Division conducts the PVS, or Property Value Study, to estimate a school district taxable value at least once every 2 years. The PBS is measured by the state of Texas and is to assure equitable distribution of funding or state funding for the school districts, and also to measure the appraisal district performance. Those are the two main purposes for the property value study: to ensure equitable distribution and also to collect data to provide taxpayers, school districts, appraisal districts, and with measures of performance. They do have 7 steps to perform the school district property value study. The first one, they gather information and they prepare market data. They select a sample using statistical models. Usually in the county, they do appraisals since they don't have enough sales. They match the PTAD values with local values, or the Property Tax Assistance Division values with local values, and they compute property ratio studies. They stratify values by and they also analyze their results. The property value study focuses mainly on the weighted mean for its measure of appraisal level. They use the confidence interval to determine if a school district meets local value. If we get an invalid local value, then we're gonna have a margin of, we do have a margin of error of 95 and 105. And if we have an invalid local value, that'll be less than 95%. And then we'll be on grace period. If we have an ISD in grace period, what we do, we challenge no later than March 13. And in order for us to do that, we have to fill out these forms. We have 3 different forms, okay? It's Form 5210A, B, and C. We have to fill them out with the petitioner information, the school ISD name, the number, the CAD name. Everything has to be filled out. And then we have the Part B, which is for the objections. We have to have every single objection by itself. Even if it's one property and we have 5 objections, we cannot combine them in one. It has to be one for each. The last time we did this, we have over 1,500 objections. We have to answer the 8 columns, as you can see here. We do have the objection number, the CAD, the property identification number, the CAD value, the protest issue, and then we have to have the evidence. In order for us to provide that evidence, we have to fill this other form, which is Part C for the evidence. It basically is the cover sheet. It has to have, again, the school district name, the number, the appraisal district name, the number, the objection number, the property ID, and the evidence that we're presenting. We have to have one of these cover pages for each objection. This is for the previous, for this specific objection. We were objecting the condition of the property changed from January 1st, which that means is that the property was completely remodeled. So obviously, if that happens, the value is going to be different than January 1st, which is when we have our appraisal date. And we have the Exhibit A, which we usually hire an appraiser to collect this kind of information so we can provide this evidence to the state controllers or the property tax assistant. That concludes for the PBS. Now this is for the MAPS review, tax code section 5.102. If you have any questions, or I can continue with this.
Any questions?
Who pays for the appraisers?
We do.
We do?
For the fee appraiser?
Yeah.
Yes.
We have to hire an appraiser?
Are you talking about from the state?
Yes.
The state
no, no,
does.
no.
They're state employees. When the state sends a field reviewer to do all this, it's their state employees.
I thought we were talking about the fee appraiser.
Those, we'll hire to get a cap rate study, or we'll hire to get specific studies from MAI appraisers to have information that will help us in a protest if we need to.
Okay, now we have.
Contract out, I'm sorry, we don't hire, we contract out. Sorry, clarify that.
Now we have the tax code section 5102, which is the maps review, or Comptroller Rule 9301, requires the controllers of public accounts to review the appraisal district's governance, taxpayer assistance, operating procedures, and appraisal standards at least once every 2 years. We have 3 tiers, okay, which means that they divide the appraisal district by 3 tiers. The smallest is tier number 3, which has less than 20,000 population, and then we have tier number 2 with a population of 20,000 and 100, between 20,000 and 120,000, and then we have tier number 1, which is over 120,000 population. Of course, El Paso is within tier number 1. This is the process, okay? In November, we get the notification of the upcoming review, which is in January. And then they request the preliminary documentations that we have to send by December the 2nd. In January, the MAPS reviewer begins the process. She starts asking questions, asking for files, going to different departments. And then she uses the guidelines to answer the review questions. And also, we do have in September the preliminary report, which is emailed to the chief appraiser. From September to December, the MAPS reviewer makes sure that we're implementing any recommendations. And then in January, they have the final review on the website, and they notify the required parties. When the reviewer makes any recommendations, we have to, if we really want to get a good score, we have to implement those recommendations. We do have a pass-fail scoring. We have 92 questions and 5 mandatory questions. Those 5 mandatory questions, we have to pass. We cannot fail them. We have the 92 questions. We can get some points off if we're missing something. And this is the yes, no scoring. As you can see, we go from 195 all the way down to unsatisfactory, which is 75%. We analyze data for residential. We analyze cost tables. We run ratio studies. We analyze sales. We review final values prior to notices. And we also work with the alternate sales tests from the state. We assist with formal and informal hearings, as well as commercial. We analyze income information. We create models, and we assist with formal, informal hearings. And this resumes my presentation. Yay!
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions on compliance?
I want you to know that this staff is very uncomfortable with, presenting to the board, and I'm very proud that they were able to put together such a great presentation.
Good job.
And be here before y'all, so you could meet them and see them.
I want to thank the board for being so patient listening to these reports, but realize one thing. Each of your entities relies on what you've heard to get the revenues you're able to spend and vote on at each one of your meetings. If you think, all of a sudden this money just falls out of heaven like manna, and you get to spend whatever you're going to spend on the county, on the school districts, it's important for you to understand, to be able to explain to the rest of the people who are on your boards exactly what processes we go through here at the Central Appraisal District to get to the numbers that you get that you're able to spend. So sometimes you get lost and think, well, these are interesting reports. No, these reflect directly on your entity. So you're here for that reason. That's why you're here.
Appreciate all
thank you.
what you did.
Thank you. Do you have something else to say about compliance?
I think it's the next thing on your
Okay,
agenda.
discussion. Okay, if you look at number 8, discussion regarding the property value study and the methods of assistance programs.
All right.
Taxpayer report.
The state legislature now, we would always
Thank
give.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, yes.
we would always give the board an update when we had a property value study or our maps review. It's now required by the tax code, so we actually put it as an agenda item so that we can discuss it. We did receive our results from the property value study. One of the things that has been changed with legislation, once we did our clerical error listing, if we felt like we were not going to pass, we would have to notify the school districts, and they would have to actually pass a resolution that would allow the appraisal district to file a protest on the values. I would also have to come to the board of directors and ask you guys to pass a resolution that would allow me to do that for the school districts. But what it comes down to is it goes against us as an appraisal district if we don't meet the confidence level. Well, I'm very excited to say we didn't have to worry about that. Shoot. So if y'all have a pencil and paper, I'll read you. We passed all of these school districts. We are within the confidence level on our property value study. Now, Mr. Miller's not here, but Clint ISD, we have a ratio of 1.01. For El Paso ISD, we have a ratio of 0.9516. For Fabens, which again is a lower valley, 0.9760. San Lazario, 1.02. Esleta, 0.9870. Anthony, 1.00. Canutillo ISD, 0.9674. Tornillo, 0.9656. And Socorro ISD, 1.00. So as you can see, all of our ratios came within confidence and then some. So we were very, very pleased about that. What we found is there were many appraisal district or school districts. It's through the appraisal district that fell out of, were in a grace or fell out of grace. Dallas had 2 school districts. Collin had 8 school districts that were out of the confidence level. So we were very, very happy. Tarrant, Bear, Travis, all were within the confidence level. So we were very, very happy to hear that. And I just want to give that report to y'all. It is on the state comptroller's website. You can go to the website and you can look at more detail. It's under the property tax assistant part of the state comptroller's website. And you can go in and then you can pull up El Paso and then you can see all the different school districts. And it'll be a real detailed, it's a real thick report like this. But you can see it in a lot of detail. So that is available. On our maps review, we're still in the process of the maps review. The maps reviewer came out. And like Ms. Medina said, there are some things that are a pass-fail. It's governance, taxpayer assistance, operating procedures, appraisal standards, and procedures and methodology. As of now, with the preliminary study, it looks like we've passed all the pass-fail. There's a couple of items that she's asked us to clarify on the, not the pass-fail, we're good there, because we have a preliminary report from her that all of the mandatory we passed. There was a couple of small questions that she wanted us to clarify that we're in the process of. And that, we have given you guys this before. This is the maps review. This is the one for 2021. So it'll be one for 2023, but it won't be final until the fall of 2023 that we'll have this available. But the property value study for 2022 is complete and we all passed. So I was very, very happy to be able to give you all that report. So,
I mean, that's great news, because if not, the state will come in, and we don't want that to happen. That's not a good thing for the community, so.
it's not.
Is there any questions? Does anybody have any questions? Thank you. That was good news.
I know, right?
Before we do anything, I want to point out that our counsel, Joe Longoria, is on the phone, and he needs to be, we need to make that part of the record, that you are here, Joe, and that even though you're on the phone, you are present.
Are you there or you asleep?
Thank you. I'm still here.
See that? It's either God or Joe. I don't know. It just comes through there. Tracy, are you still here?
Good evening, Board of Directors. Tracy Carter, Taxpayer Liaison Officer. I'd like to give you all an update on the Appraisal Review Board. So far, we have lost one Appraisal Review Board member. But the ARB is still good with their 44, so thank you all for approving the 45 members. We're still good. The State Comptroller's training for the Appraisal Review Board will be set for March 27th to the 28th, and this will be virtual training. And the Appraisal Review Board did get additional training. On March 6th, they met with John Traybold. He's an MAI appraiser. He went through the 3 approaches of value, the sales and market, the income, the cost, explained about the USPAP standards and mass appraisal. So he gave them a lot of great information. And also on March 7th, we had a meeting with the Roy Armstrong, the Appraisal Review Board attorney. So he explained to him the property tax code, the laws, the model hearing procedures that the state comptroller puts out that they have to follow. So we got a lot of great information for the Appraisal Review Board this month. So if y'all have it, we are going to be in session on March 20th to the 23rd to hear motions to correct. So the ARB will be here this month. So thank you all very much.
Questions,
Y'all have
Our
any
liaison
questions?
officer? I want to remind you that we cannot communicate in any way, shape, or form with the ARB. Please, if anybody approaches you, there's your answer right there. That's what Tracy does. She's our liaison officer. So go to her. Don't go to them, please. If a taxpayer comes to you and has an issue, go to her. Do not answer. Do not come back to us here. I mean, that's what Tracy does. So please do not answer questions relating to the ARB. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Any questions of Tracy? All right. Dinah, it's all yours.
Okay, just a couple of things to go over. I wanted to let you know, I'm sure in January, I reminded you that we were going to have a mobile unit for the Consolidated Tax Office the last week of January so people could come and pay their taxes. And I wanted to tell you, in 2021, we had $2.3 million were collected at that mobile unit. This year, $4.2 million was collected at their mobile unit. So it is a very good opportunity for property owners to not have to drive downtown or to the county tax office. The bank no longer works with them, so having this mobile unit was really helpful. I did want to let you know that David, myself, James Thompson, and Rick Medina, we did a 2-day tour of the county so we could see what was happening within our county, and my managers are doing the same thing. So not only are the appraisers out there in the field, your chief appraiser all the way down is out in the field to see what's going on in the county of El Paso. We are responsible for that. And starting next week, James Thompson, David, and myself will be meeting with the taxing entities, the financial departments or the mayors, whoever wants to meet with us, to give them an idea of what to expect on the 2023 notices going out. We'll have some preliminary, very rough estimate numbers for them that we'll be talking to them about. They'll get their preliminary roll the end of April, but we try to give them an update as the notices are going out. We're already booked with all of the taxing entities, all the way from Anthony ISD, Village of Vinton, all the way to Tornillo ISD. That will be, and the cities in between, and the community college and the hospital, and the county and the city of El Paso, of course, all the cities. So we'll be starting to meet with them. Notices will be going out the end of this month. Again, with Mr. Berg said, if you get a property owner that calls you, my notice came out and this is crazy, what are you going to do about this? Refer them to myself, to David Stone, to Tracy Carter, and we'll make sure they know when the protest season is and to help them through that. We're still running our ratios. We did just finish, which I thought was very important, with what's been happening with appraisal districts and ransomware and cybersecurity issues. This week, my IT department, there is a state law that says anybody who uses a municipal or county or appraisal district computer has to do mandatory training. And it's a webinar that you have to attend. And so anybody here that uses it, which is everybody, even our A or B member, chair and secretary have to take it. So that's mandatory. But we wanted something that was a little more specific and really talk to the appraisers face to face. So our IT department put together this amazing training and actually had samples of emails that were, if you clicked on the link, you were going to be allowing malware. So it was very good. The employees really took to the training, and we had a lot of participation from the employees. So that was above and beyond. It was about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how much participation we had. So for those of you, I know Commissioner Haggerty, Mr. Haggerty, you're part of that cybersecurity, very interested in Dr. Acevedo. So yeah, we are really doing continuing training to ensure our products are very safe for IoT. We have multiple servers. We have all kinds of blocks, the cloud. We have all kinds of different ways, and they catch 99.9% of what comes through. But that 1%, is us clicking on the wrong thing, and so that was really something I was very proud of. The last thing, Cynthia, if we'll pass out. This is a preliminary budget. It's the draft budget. The committee, Ms. Ramirez, Mr. Mena, and Mr. Berg met and went over this. We sent it to the entities. It has to go to the entities before the 15th of March, which meant it went out on Tuesday, the 14th. This is our draft. This is for the board members to look at, review, talk to your entities. If you have any questions, you can contact Rosa, you can contact me. In April, at the April meeting, which will be, hold on, let me flip my calendar over, April 20th, that is a workshop. At that time, we will go over item by item. We will go over whatever however you want to do it. We'll actually go over the budget and talk about it. Any concerns, any comments, anything you want us to address. But in between now and then, don't hesitate to give us a call. Give Rosa a call. Might be something that we can address over the phone. It might be something you want us to go into. We can go ahead and write it down and get the information ready for you. So the April 20th will be strictly a workshop. It's very informal, but this is the opportunity for you guys to tell us, for us to tell you what we need and for you to tell us what we can't have. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But it's for us to talk and be able to explain some questions you have. Or for you, Dr. Acevedo, you were saying, is this a time that we can maybe beef up, IT? I don't know. But these are the times that in April that we can talk. Now, after that, whatever we discuss at April, we will implement those changes. That new budget will go out to you. We'll email it out to you. And we post the numbers by the 10th of May. It's whatever Sunday is the closest to the 10th of May. It goes in the newspaper. We have to do that posting. And then our May board meeting, we have public comment. It's set up as separate public comment. It's public comment on the budget. We listen to public comment. At that point, you still have an opportunity if there's something you want to change. But once we vote on it in April, then it goes to the entities as our final budget. Now, the entity has 30 days in which to look at it. If they don't like it, they have to pass a resolution. The majority of the entities have to pass a resolution. Comes back to us, and we have until July 15th. It must be done by July 15th. We submit it at that point. It doesn't go back to the entities. Knock on wood, we've been very diligent. We've been very good. And the board has been very on top of it and done their research and their homework. And we've been able to finalize it within that time period. And we haven't had any issues. So I want to continue that. And so that's why the workshop is very, very important for us to attend and address whatever questions or concerns or comments or, kudos or whatever we want to talk about. Okay, and that's the end of my presentation.
Two things. First of all, just for your knowledge, I think we talked about it last month. The Dallas Central Appraisal District was hacked. They were supposed to pay $1 million. That's what the ransom was. They negotiated down to $200,000, and they paid it. They had to pay $200,000 because of a hack into the Central Appraisal District in Dallas. They did get their stuff restored to the best of their ability. That's what we're trying to avoid. So in your school districts or in your county or wherever you are, don't think it can't happen to you. Just clicking on a link or one download by somebody in your system, which is what happened at the Central Appraisal District in Dallas. Their CEO, he himself, got an email that he thought was from somebody he knew. It said that name. And it had an attachment. He downloaded the attachment, and the software, the malware went into their system, and they took everything out of their system. So don't think it can't happen. That's the city of Dallas, Texas. That's issue number one. Number two, sadly, I won't be here for the April meeting, and you'll have to run the April meeting with you, please. And that will be a workshop session. I will be back for our May session when we vote on the budget. But if you ever have any questions, look, guys, we're a family. We're in this together to try to raise money to support your entities. So the answer is we need to talk to each other, we need to live for each other, we need to believe in each other, and you need to come to these meetings so that we can make it possible for your entities to have the money to do what they do every day. We don't have any issues under executive session. If we did, we would have to have an agenda. I don't have anything, nobody brought anything up. We don't have an agenda. Is that right, Joe? Say yes, Joe. Go back to sleep, Joe. All right, discussion of possible action on anything. I don't think anybody has any discussion on possible on a previous item that we didn't discuss. Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
How was the conference?
Conference, you want to talk about the conference?
Tracy, are you still here? The conference was very, very well attended. That's where we found out a lot about the cybersecurity. Luckily, we were already on top of it and had already started getting our classes together. It gave pretty much the information that Joe Longoria trained you guys in January. It was a repeat of that in some of the sessions that were for A or B members. They just kind of stressed a little bit more detail that they talked about. So, Tracy?
Yeah, so I am currently waiting for the website for the presentations from each of the presenters for the board of directors to go on the website so I can present that to you all. But there was some on to hire a chief appraiser, the 25 do's and don'ts as a board of directors. So it's a lot of helpful information. So as soon as I get that, I will pass it on to you all.
I'm sorry I went, but the rest of you, for whatever reason, couldn't go at the last minute. But I will tell you, the presenters that they had there were unbelievable. I have actually recommended to other entities, like the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, to bring in at least one of those speakers that they had, because those speakers were incredible. And I hope you're all invited. You'll all be paid for by this district if you're willing to go. But I'm telling you, you really miss something when you don't go. Yes, you learn a lot about appraisal districts, but the speakers, the motivational speakers, and the content of those speakers is absolutely astounding. They've had, at the last conference we went to, we had one of the people that were injured in the Boston Marathon. And she came, I think her legs were blown off. And she came to give a speech about what it was like to be at the finish line when the bomb went off and it took her legs off. So these are not people related necessarily just to numbers. These are people related to your feelings. And this past, we had a great speaker about somebody who had grown up in Kentucky, and she was very, very poor, and how she put herself through college and made an incredible change in her life. And you got to hear that story directly from her. And I think those of you who missed it missed something. So I really think for the next conference, you ought to consider going.
We'll make sure everybody knows way in
I'm
advance.
just telling you. I had a great time at the conference. Thank you for sending me. I thought it was well worth it. If there is no other business, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I promised you 7. We're off by 3 minutes. I'm sorry, Josh, but we'll do it right on next time. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you, board members, for your patience.
Thank you,
for
Joe.
the presentations. Thank you, Joe. Bye.
Time is exactly 7.